Well, good morning, West Hills. So glad to be at the church that has the newest flagpole in the country. You're giving me something to put on my resume now, and wow, the newest flagpole. Dave's gone visiting family in Texas, and it gives me an opportunity to be with you. Been looking forward to being with you here this morning. It is always fun to come back here and share some time around God's Word and see what He has for us this morning. If you're visiting with us this morning, we have been in a series that we're calling Survivor. That's kind of taking us through a New Testament book called James. And we kind of already identified what the theme of the book is, and it's that faith is a fight. James is reminding us that if we're really going to take God and His ways serious, there's always going to be struggle. There's always going to be tension. It's not always going to be easy. And so as we move along the book of James, he gives us all these practical ways to fight strong in our faith. And so this morning, James is going to help us trust God with open and closed doors in our life. Now, open and closed doors look differently in our lives here this morning. They all look different. But what we all know is we all know what it feels like to be in a position where we have to trust God. See if you can relate to this video.
Jesus, I just don't trust you.
You don't trust me?
No, I mean, I want to trust you, I just don't.
I have an exercise that I think will really help.
Oh, okay.
Stand here and face this direction. Now, do you trust me?
No, I just said I don't trust you.
This is all part of the exercise.
Okay.
All right? Whenever I ask you if you trust me, you say, "Yes, Jesus, I trust you."
Even though I don't.
It's practice.
Okay.
So, do you trust me?
Yes, Jesus, I trust you.
Now, fall back.
Are you going to trust me?
Don't worry about that.
Okay, that's the part I'm worried about.
You can do this, okay? Just trust me.
Trust you.
Fall back.
Okay, well, Jesus, I trust
Good.
you. Yes, I do trust you. I'm going to fall.
Okay.
Woo!
Okay. Let's try this again. Just face this direction and keep your feet planted. All right? Do you trust me?
Yes, Jesus, I trust you.
Now, fall back.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
All right.
I'm really going to do it.
Good.
Ah! Oh, Jesus, you're really close. I didn't think you were going to catch me, but you did. Oh, that was great. That was great.
You're ready for level 2.
Level 2, here I come, baby. Woo! Whoa.
Okay, hold it.
Oh, you know what? You're too close. You need to move back.
Ah, right.
Okay.
This one's a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
Stand here,
Uh-huh.
but face me.
Oh, forward ball. I
Okay.
can do that.
Wait.
Whoa.
Okay. Wait for my signal.
Oh, right, the Jesus signal.
Yes, the Jesus signal. Do you trust me?
Yes, Jesus, I trust you so much.
Good. Fall back.
That's awesome.
It is awesome, especially when you do it.
Seriously?
Of course.
Okay, Jesus, I don't know if you noticed this, but there is nobody over there.
I know it looks that way to you.
It looks that way. It is that way.
You can do this, Laura. Just trust me and fall back.
Jesus, I can't do that.
We can do it together.
I can't.
You can.
I won't.
There's lots of different type of trust falls that we have in our experience with God, right? But probably the most agonizing, the most difficult of all trust falls is when we have to trust God with open and closed doors, with all the choices that we have to make. I mean, God, which door do I go through? And what happens if I go through the wrong door? And what happens if I missed a door, missed an opportunity? Am I somehow missing something that you wanted me to have? Am I out of your will? These are questions that took an interesting turn. Half hour right before I was about to marry a couple. I was the marrying pastor, and you know the church is all set up, and people are there, the food's ready to go, and the bride pulls me aside. And that's normal because they have a lot of fears and nervousness a lot. And sometimes the bride and groom wants to talk to me right before. Half hour before everything's ready to go, she pulls me aside. And she says, Pastor Matt, I have a quick question for you. And I said, what? What's up? Is everything okay? Oh, everything's okay. But what happens if I'm marrying the wrong person? I'm looking at my watch. I said, you're up in half hour. Let me ask you a question. Do you love this guy? And she says, absolutely, I love this guy. This is the guy I want to marry. But how do I know this is the exact guy that God chose for me? We have this thing that everyone here has experienced called buyer's remorse. You know what I'm saying? You know what this is like, right? You've thought about this particular purchase, especially if it's a big purchase, a house or a car or some big deal. And you think about it and you run the numbers and you get advice and you go to Google and you really put a lot of thought and intention to this. And then you do it, you buy it. And all of a sudden this knot starts forming in your stomach when you get home. And you start thinking, oh man, did I pay too much for this? And did I really need this? And was this a bad decision? And maybe I could have got it somewhere else, or maybe I could have delayed this. And all of a sudden, this kind of guilt seeps in. Psychologists call it buyer's remorse. I think every person who's followed Christ has experienced some form of spiritual buyer's remorse. There's this fear that if I walk through the door or the wrong door, or if I miss a door, somehow I'm going to feel all this regret. In fact, there's some of you here today who have often thought, maybe I did that. Maybe I walked through a wrong door. Or maybe I didn't take an opportunity. I didn't walk through a door I should have. And in your mind, you walk through all these imaginary scenarios of what would have been different in your life now if you would have chose differently. How do we resolve this as Christ followers? James is going to help us trust God with open and closed doors in our life. And he gives us 3 truths to kind of wrestle with, okay? Here's the first truth. Today matters. Today matters. We're going back to chapter 4, and we're starting in verse 13. Listen to what James says. Now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry our business and make money. Why you do not even know what will happen tomorrow? What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. I love the 2 words that he starts off with. It's as if James is scolding us like a parent who sticks their finger at a child who's messing around at the dinner table. James says, now listen. Do you ever feel that? What's he doing? He's singling out the person who thinks that his open doors and opportunities tomorrow are a sure thing. He says to that person, listen now, you need to know something. Not only do you not know what tomorrow will bring, but you don't even know if you'll be alive tomorrow. He says, listen, your life's like a fog. Now, living here in California and kind of near the coast, we know what June gloom is, right? We're going to go through the next 3 weeks, and all of a sudden this haze is going to kind of filter in, this fog, but as Californians, we don't worry about it because by noon, it burns off. It's there and gone, and James says, just like your life. I mean, you didn't think the person would die. You thought you had a lot more time with this person. And then all of a sudden, they're just gone off the face of the planet forever. They were here and then they're gone. Listen, I hate to spoil your party, but the odds are against you. You have a 100% chance of dying. Last time I checked, the death rate is 1 per person. You're going to die. Well, what is James saying? Today matters. With your open and closed doors that are sitting in front of you, just know this. Listen, tomorrow's gone. You're not sure of tomorrow. The only thing real in your life right now is today. So what's James telling us to do? Cultivate a willingness to say yes to God. Watch this. Ready or not. Ready or not. It's right here. And today matters. Yesterday's gone. You don't have tomorrow. You better be willing to say yes to God under circumstances, whether you're ready or not. Psychologists use a technical term to describe a child that either can't or refuses to transition to adulthood. In fact, there's a movie that's out that's named after it. They use the term failure to launch. They just can't get the skills together, make the decisions to actually transition to adulthood. Now, today we use that term really loosely to describe someone who wants everything to line up perfectly before they'll launch, before they'll decide. They want this Pinterest perfect picture before they go to college. They want this Pinterest perfect picture before they move out. Everything has to be perfect before they get married. Everything has to be perfect before they buy a house. Everything has to be perfect before they have kids. People ask me all the time, Matt, listen, you've raised 2 kids, and my kids are young adults now, and when did you know that you were ready to have kids? Here's my theological answer. Ha! Ha! Listen, if you're a woman asking me if you're ready to have kids, here's what you do. Get a beanbag, tie it around your stomach for 9 months, and then at 9 months, take half of the beans out and see if your clothes fit you in your closet. That's how you'll know whether you're ready. You want some more tests? Here, find a live, unhappy octopus and put a t-shirt on it. That's what it feels like to be a parent. Take a 10-gallon barrel of Legos and throw them all over the living room. Put on a blindfold, take off your shoes, and if you can walk across the living room without getting hurt, you're probably ready. You want to know if you're ready for school projects? Okay. Take an egg carton, take an empty toilet paper tube, a toothpick, and some tape, and make an Egyptian pyramid. And then you'll know you're ready. You want another one? Here. Go to the store, take with you 2 live goats. Make sure the goats don't get out of your sight, and make sure the goats don't eat anything while you're shopping. And be ready to pay for anything the goats tip over or mess up. And then you're going to know. Can we all just admit that readiness is overrated? I mean, listen, we're all for preparation, and we're all for planning. But if you make readiness the sole criteria for whether you'll walk through a door and say yes to God, listen, no one in the Bible would have said yes to God if they were ready. I mean, it's just not a good way to predict the future. When I did youth ministry for 13 years, and every summer we'd all go to Raging Waters in San Dimas. And I think it's still there. Back then, their big feature was the 5-story water slide. 5 stories. Now, back then, I was dumb enough to do it. I mean, I was just fearless of it. You pastor, and I'll show you kids. And then you get up 5 stories, and there's no tube that's protecting you. It's just a slide straight down. 5 stories. And then you get up there, and you're about ready to sit down, and my turn comes. And I'm sitting down in this little tub of water for the first time, looking down 5 stories, and the employee, who's some 18-year-old, 16-year-old, says, "Are you ready?" Am I ready? I'm about to do G-forces down this tube in a bathing suit, and the wedgie's probably going to end my life. And you're asking me if I'm ready or not. I mean, folks, let's just face it. There are some opportunities and some doors you're never going to be ready for. And James says, today matters, though. I think us wanting to feel at peace with something before we do it is overrated. I'm all for preparing. I'm all for planning. But if you're using, I need to be at peace as the sole criteria before walking through a door, folks, think about it. Who would have ever in the Bible said yes to God if they were waiting to feel a peace about something? It's just not a good indicator of the future. We're not going to feel a peace about everything we do. Hey, you ought to talk to your family member about their alcoholism. Well, I'm just kind of waiting until I feel a peace about it. Really? Are we ever going to feel a peace about tough conversations we're going to have? Hey, you ought to think about giving to God. I mean, the Bible talks about that, making a sacrifice. And, I'm kind of waiting until I feel a peace about it. Hey, this guy that you're dating, this guy treats you like garbage. He takes advantage of you. All this guy wants to do is sleep with you. Yeah, but I'm waiting till I feel a peace about it. I mean, I'm really in love with this guy. This is just crazy. We're not going to feel a peace about everything. My dad is here, and my mom is here this morning. He might remember this episode. I remember coming home. I was dating my wife, who's here, 29 years ago. And we had been dating. We were dating for a year. And I loved her. I told her after the first date she was someone I could spend the rest of my life with. I don't advise that. And now it's been a year, and I love this girl, and I know she's going to be the one I'm going to marry. Just not now. I was in school. In fact, I was thinking about going away to school somewhere else. And I remember coming home one time real late one Sunday night, and my dad was up late, and it's Sunday night, so he's having eggs and chorizo, which is a Latino thing. Don't worry about it. And he's sitting at our table, and I sit down. I haven't caught up with him in a while. And he says, "Hey, so what's going on?" And we're just talking shop. And he said, "How's that Christy doing?" Really like Christy. I said, "Oh, we're really doing good. I think she's the one." Well, then why aren't you marrying her? And I wanted to say, "Eat your eggs. Why aren't you marrying her?" I go, "Well, what do you mean why because I've got a lot of issues that I'm unsure about. I got school." And I start rattling off 10 really, really good reasons, so I thought, why I'm just not ready. Don't have that peace about it. I don't feel that readiness. And each one, he gives me an answer, a practical answer to solve each one. And so I just come up with another one. Well, I'm not ready for... Within a week, I have an engagement ring, and within 2 weeks, I'm engaged. You see, I was wrestling with feelings. He was addressing facts. James says, today matters. And maybe this is where your trust fall is with God when it comes to open and closed doors. Today matters. Here's a second truth he gives us. God is writing our story. God is writing our story. Look at verse 15. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. Now listen. God, the creator of the universe, has a designed plan that intersects all the details of my life and yours. I think one of the greatest crippling myths that people have about God is that he's a cosmic CEO, and he's in charge of this expansive organization called the universe. And because all these things are going on in our universe, he only has time for people that are really important. And if you're someone who's insignificant or just not spiritual enough, he just doesn't have time for you. And James says, no. God does know you intimately and has a plan for you. Do you realize that when you read the scriptures, there is story after story after story of God, the Creator, intersecting the most obscure nobodies on the planet. They were nobodies. They were obscure until God intervened in their life. The disciples actually thought this for a while. When Jesus finally revealed who he was, you know what? When Jesus went over to talk to some kids, you know what the disciples did? They shooed him away. Jesus doesn't have time for you. You're kids. You smell. This is Jesus. He's here for important people, spiritual people. And Jesus has to correct them. What are you guys doing? Jesus, you don't want to waste your time with these people. Yes. Now, one of my favorite chapters in all of the book of Psalms is Psalm 139, where David is he's just taken by how this creator God could have this intimate knowledge of who we are. And David says, you know words before they even come out of my mouth. He says, there's nowhere I can escape from your presence. You know me inside and out. In fact, this is what he says. Your thoughts of me outnumber the very grains of sand on the beach. That's how much you think about me. That's how much he thinks about you. And then he says something like, so crazy. And he says, and the days of our life were written in a book, like chapters, before they were even came to be. I can understand a God who cares about me and knows me intimately, but you're telling me that there's a predetermined plan, like a story that God's written out for my life before it even came about. Yes. Now listen, as an incredible, mind-blowing, life-changing truth as that is, that the Creator God cares for us. Folks, let's be honest as Christ followers. It's also a very hard concept to wrap around our heads. Because are you telling me then that God is in control of things? Apparently, he has a will. It says this. In fact, notice James's encouragement to you. Stop your arrogance and stop your boasting. This ought to humble you. Just when you thought this was all about your scheming, your plan, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this, and that's all great and everything, but you better get humble, because the creator of the universe has a plan. And guess what? You can't change it. That troubles me. I'm not sure what to do with all of that. Here's what I kind of liken it to. Because I remember the first time really getting serious with God and getting into the Bible and finding out that the Bible claims that the creator of the universe has this predetermined plan for me. I thought about, this is what it would feel like. It'd be like, as a kid, being on the Peter Pan ride in Disneyland. And it's fun. I mean, it's really cool. And you go into this huge room and all the lights are out. And they have you suspended in the air. And it's really cool. And you look down and they have this animated miniature city. Like you're flying in the air. And as a kid, you think you're flying. You're having the greatest time. And you're going, this is so cool. And then all of a sudden there's a mechanical failure. And the lights go out. I mean, the ride stops and the lights go on. And you're looking around as a kid. And you see cables. And you see tracks and rail systems. And you see nuts and bolts. And you're going, we're not flying. And I'm not in the car. Someone's controlling all this. This is just all make-believe. Is that what it's like? I mean, that's what it feels like. When I start reading the Bible and I see consistently that God's got this plan, it's like the lights go on and I find out, this isn't me. It's already determined. The script for my life has already been written. I'm not in control. This is all smoke and mirrors and a bunch of wires, and it bothers me. And listen, it's one of the mysteries about God that I can't put together when it comes to human will and God's plan for my life. There's lots of things about God that I don't understand, but that's one of them. But this is what bugs me the most. That God's got this predetermined plan, He's got this will, and it ought to humble me, and I don't know what it is. God never even holds me accountable to it, because I don't know what it is. I'm kind of in the dark. And that's caused us as Christians to do funny things. In fact, I think it's produced two types of Christians. The first one is what I call the supernatural signs Christian. See, because we don't know what the plan is, some people believe that God is using supernatural signs to kind of guide us. They believe God is kind of mystical when it comes to open and close doors. He's going to give us a burning bush, to be really clear, out of nowhere, so we know it's God. And then if we screw up and fail, He's going to send a whale like He did Jonah and put us back on the right path. And so people find themselves waiting for supernatural burning bushes, and they're waiting for supernatural whales from God. And then they'll know. And I have a lot of friends who believe that, or like that. And maybe you're like that. You believe that God is going to send supernatural signs to tell you what his will is. And just be careful. Because our faith can turn into superstition fast. And you and I have both seen Christians act in faith that looks more like voodoo, or horoscopes, or Ouija boards, or the magic 8-ball, or they treat God like a genie in the bottle. We got to be careful with that, folks. I believe he's a supernatural God, but listen, if you're looking for signs to give you a glimpse of his hidden will, be careful, because a sign can justify anything that you want to in life. It's like me, pulling up to the donut shop. And I know God wants me to watch my health and watch my weight. So what do? I pray, God, if you really don't want me to have a donut, don't let there be an empty parking space. Just give me a sign. Fill the parking lot and give me... See, we can manipulate this and fool ourselves with signs and rationalize anything we want to do in life because we feel we have a sign. Not the best objective way to be led by God. And then there are what I call the natural sign Christians. Now, they believe that God's going to give us some more practical clues to opening and close doors. And what I mean by natural is like when a carpenter looks at the grains on a piece of wood. That's a natural flow and a natural bent of the wood. And so when you sand, you go with the grains. I didn't create the grains, but I'm smart enough to observe that that's the way that piece of wood was made, so I need to go with the grains. And so when we look at our lives, we need to kind of analyze and take inventory of the type of grains that we have because God's telling us something. And I kind of get that. That kind of makes sense, right? I mean, I'm a father, and I could see attributes and in my kids now, who are 24 and 26, that I saw back when they were kids. And there were signs of how I knew they were going to turn out. In fact, every responsible parent tries to find those bends and grains in their kids' lives. Maybe it's from music, or maybe it's athletics, or maybe it's academics. But they have certain interests and they have certain personalities. And you say, hey, listen, that's just the way God wired them. And those might be clues as to their destiny in life. And so I want to do everything I can as a parent to facilitate those and platform those and set them up because that's who they are. Those are natural sign people. And we could look at those type of things in our life and go, I think, think about it this way. You're on a trip. And how you pack for that trip is going to be reflective of the destiny that you're going to. If I'm going to Hawaii, look in my bag. I got sandals, I got shorts, I got t-shirts, I got a bathing suit. I'm ready to go because I know where I'm going. But if I'm going on a business trip, I might have a jacket, I might have my computer in there, I'm going to have some nice shoes to wear, I might go out to dinner someplace nice. But we pack according to our destiny. Maybe God has pre-packed our baggage as a sign of where our destiny is and where his will is for us. And I believe that. So I agree with them too. I go, okay, yeah, God is supernatural, but then God also gives us natural signs. So what are we to do, Matt? Well, here's what we're to do. I believe there's a way that we could handle God's mysterious will for our life in a way that'll give you the most amount of confidence. And here's what it is. We need to accept that God's ultimate vision for our life is not centered around what I do, but the person I'm becoming. You bank on that, supernatural and natural doesn't matter. That's a sure thing. That the vision that God has for your life, when you read the Bible, is not centered around what you do. It's centered around the person he has in mind for you to become. You say, how do I know that? Ephesians 1:4 says this, for he chose us in him before the creation of the world. Wow. You're telling me that God had things pre-packed, ready to go, before the universe was even created? Yes. So, I mean, like who to marry? And no, it doesn't say that. I mean, where I'm going to live? No, it doesn't say that. What house I should buy? No, it doesn't say that. You know he pre-packed you for? Ephesians 1:4, to be holy and blameless. That's who he wanted you to be. Romans 8:28 says that we were predestined, determined beforehand to live in this house, to marry this person, to have this many kids. No, to be conformed to the image of Christ. Did you know every single time it talks about God's predetermined plan, what it centers around is not what you do, but who he wants you to become. And do you realize the implications of this? That means that I could choose a wrong door in life, a wrong opportunity. I could experience failure, conflict, and pain in my life and still be in God's will if I'm allowing him to change me and my character because of it. Did you get that? I can still choose wrong doors. And it's not that God's not interested in what school we choose. It's not that he's interested in who I marry. It's not that he's interested in the particular house that he's buying. It's just that the story that he's writing for you, what you don't know about, is more centered upon who you are and are becoming and not what you do. So truth number 2, God's writing my story. And maybe this for you is your trust fall when it comes to open and close doors. Let me give you the last. Is this good? Is this making sense? Okay, let me give you the last one. Here's the third truth James leaves us with. Choices empower me. Choices empower me. Look at verse 17. Watch this. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. Whoa! Time out, man. Okay, this seems like it's just one contradiction after the other. You just told me that today matters. Right. Ready or not? I get all that. Right. And then you tell me that God's got my chapters in my story written out. Right. And that I can't control that. Right. And it's all about who he wants me to be, not what I do. Right. And now you come full circle, and then you're going to tell me, but that I have choices to make. And God expects me to make the right choice. In fact, it's a sin. I dishonor God if I know what the right thing to do, I know the right door, I know the right opportunity, I know the right decision, and if I don't do it, he's mad. I've dishonored him. What are you trying to tell me? Listen, here's what James is trying to tell us. Our relationship with God always will include our will and our ability to make decisions. And you can never take my ability to make decisions as a human being out of the equation in having a relationship with God. You say, Matt, where do you get that? All the way back in Genesis. What does God do? He gives them one boundary, one rule. You can do whatever you want in this garden, eat from wherever you want, but from this one tree, no bueno. Can't have it. That seems pretty simple. And here's what he didn't do. He made the rule and the boundary clear, but he didn't put a fence around it. I would have done that. I would have said, listen, I'm going to make sure you don't do it. And so I'm going to put an electrical fence that gives you a little shock every time. He could have, put this 10-story wall all the way around it, like Trump wants to do with our country, so that no one penetrates. No one's going to say, listen, I'm going to make sure that no one... You know what he did? Rather than give them a fence and a wall, he gave them a choice. And here's why. Because our Creator God knew that the minute I take away human freedom to choose out of relationship, I have created robots, not relationship. And so, if you want a relationship with me, you can say yes or no. And you know, today, every human being, me and you can say yes and no to God and what God wants you to do. We have a whole Bible filled with a lot of do's and don'ts. And you have the ability and the choice and the freedom to say yes and no to every single one of them. Because if God didn't give you that, he makes you a robot. And he doesn't want robots. God is in relentless pursuit of relationship with human beings. I love it. Go back to the very first chapter of James. James says that if we got a question and we're at an impasse, ask God for wisdom. Think about that for a second. Wisdom. Well, he didn't say, listen, if you want to know the right door, the right answer, just ask God. He didn't say that. He said ask him for wisdom. Why? Because he wants to engage you in decision making. You have choices. That's part of the plan. That's how I design life. And so you don't have to ask God for the right answer. No, ask for wisdom. And that engages, watch this, and it empowers you. Imagine a parent who makes all the decisions for their kids themselves. They make them all. Now, you're thinking, that's my dad and mom. That was them. Well, if that's true, you're probably in therapy. Now, if you're saying, hey, that might be a good plan for it to work with my kids, I'm going to make all their decisions. Let me tell you something. Your kids will be in therapy. Why? Because we know that making decisions is an indispensable tool to shaping character and shaping who we are. We need that. And what are we trying to tell kids by giving them decision making? That you influence outcomes by what you say yes to and what you say no to. You are empowered by the Creator God to make decisions. You are empowered to influence outcomes. And we want our kids to know that early on. Now listen, let me show you kind of how this works. Let me show you some pictures on the screens. Okay? You say, well, how does choices empower me? Watch this. When we devalue choices that I make in my life, my circumstances start making me feel powerless, like a victim. I start saying, I can't do anything about this. And you start feeling all the circumstances of life are caving in on you. And all of a sudden, your choices seem diminished. They're devalued. And you start feeling like a victim. But now watch this. Look at the next slide. But when I value the God-given choices and the ability to act, I have greater and greater influence over my circumstances and my outcomes, and I begin to feel empowered. Not that I'm God. I'm not the king of the universe. But Creator God wanted you to know that your choices have outcomes, and you can influence your life by your decisions. We teach that to our kids, and God teaches it to us. Now you're saying, okay, well, wait a minute here. Wait. No, listen. Read the book of Proverbs. You know what the book of Proverbs is all about? Cause and effect. It's not promises. They're probabilities. If you do this, cause, chances are you'll get this effect. Treat your friends like garbage, cause, no one likes you. That's a proverb. You know why? Because God has designed life that way with natural laws. If you do this, this is what you'll get. That's what we're teaching our kids. Listen, you make these choices, they have outcomes. They have effects. And read through Proverbs. It's great. It gives us all these great decision-making principles because the author's trying to tell us that we have influence over outcomes. You do dumb things, you're going to get bad life. You do good things, you're going to have bad consequences. You're going to have great consequences and great outcomes. Now, this is the funny part. Knowing that, listen to some of our prayers the next time that we're praying to God. It's funny how many of us want God to give us an immediate solution to a problem, but we don't want to change the decisions we're making that got us into the problem in the first place. You make all these decisions in life, and now, God, help me, save me, give me a solution. And God's going, change the decisions you're making, and you'll get a different outcome. Is there anyone else up there? You see the problem with that kind of prayer? Think about all of the power your yes and no have in life. Psychologists say that we make about 70 conscious decisions a day. That's 25,000 a year. That's 1.7 million in a lifetime over the span of 7 years. and take all those decisions that you make, and you and me are the sum of them. It's part of the way God designed life. Choices empower us. Now, let me end with this. Here's the bad and good news about choices. The bad news about choices is that makes us responsible. And God holds us responsible for our decisions to make. In fact, James is saying, listen, if you know the right thing to do, that you ought to do, and you don't do it, you dishonor God. You are responsible for your decisions. You say, okay, man, then how do I do that? I mean, I don't know the chapters he's writing. I don't know the stories is God writing for my life. How do I make God-honoring decisions? It's real simple. Imagine a square. Got it? Square in your head? Fill that square with all of the choices that you're free to make. Any choices. You want to marry that person? Bink. Do it. You want to buy the house? Bink. You want to go to school? Bink. You want to take out that loan? Bink. You want to date that person? Bink. Imaginary square. Fill all the square with all of your choices. I believe God gives you the freedom, this will be controversy, to do whatever you want. Really. You have choices. You can say yes, no, whatever you want. And let the square, and inside the square, those dots, let them represent all of your freedom to make choices. However, because you are responsible for your decisions, we all are accountable to boundaries. James says, if you know the right thing to do it and don't do it, it's dishonoring to God. So what has God given us to make sure that we can make God-honoring decisions? He's given us boundaries. So each one of the 4 posts on your square represents a boundary. Here's boundary number 1 to your square. What's the Bible say? Check the Bible. He's clear on a lot of things. Check there. Secondly, wisdom. That's what the whole book of Proverbs is about. Hey, is this the wise thing to do? Cause and effect. Third thing, what are the circumstances involved in this? God could be speaking, supernatural, natural ways. I don't know, but I need to analyze that. And the last thing, any promptings from the Holy Spirit. See, God resides within Christ followers. He's not just there with us, he's there in us. And the Bible says there's this incredible relationship where God will move inside of our lives, our hearts and our thinking and our convictions and prompt us. Now, listen to me very carefully. Those are in a particular chronological order, from objective to subjective. Start with the Bible, pretty objective. Secondly, wisdom, that's pretty objective. Circumstances gets more subjective. Promptings, very subjective. Is that God or a bad pizza? You see what I'm saying? And so I want to make sure I'm evaluating all of those. But now watch this. If you don't have a problem with any of those 4, you get to choose. Anything in that square, you get to choose. Which? Isn't that good? Let me give you the good news about choices. Watch this. Here's the good news about choices. What you choose could be perfectly in God's will. And it's your choice. Because he honors your choices. And so if I make a choice, and I choose it because of what I want, you could be perfectly within God's will. Which leads me right back to the woman at the wedding. So she pulls me aside. She says, Matt, how do I know this is the right person? Do you love her? Yeah. Do you love this guy? Yeah, I love the guy. He's the one I choose, but how do I know this is the one that God chose for me? And here's what I said to her. Because we have such a loving God, he has honored you by giving you choices. And you have chosen wisely. That's what I told her. Let me leave you with 3 questions. 2 questions. 2 questions. Where is your trust fall with open and closed doors in your life right now? You had a crossroads, got an open door situation, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do here? What does that look like in your life right now? An open or closed door. And here's the second question. What truth from James will give you the most help? Today matters. God's writing my story. Choices empower me. Which advice from James is going to help you at your crossroads with your open and closed door? Let me close in prayer. Father, I'm sitting in a room here filled with people that really sincerely want to honor you with their life. They want to make the right decisions. They want to walk through the right doors to honor you. But Father, it gets confusing sometimes. And James has given us some principles to really wrestle with. Because there are those who are just at a failure to launch, and they just need to be reminded that today matters. There are opportunities right here that'll be gone, and what's real is right now. Father, would you help them to cultivate the willingness to say yes to you, ready or not? And Father, there's those of us who are over-spiritualizing things when it comes to your hidden, mysterious will. And for someone who's confused and conflicted, would you just remind them that your vision for our lives is more about who you want us to become and not what to do? And Father, for someone who is afraid of being empowered with choices, yes, we're responsible for all our choices we make, but our choices could also be perfectly within your will, and that they would be able to enjoy the freedom to go what school they want to go to, or choose the spouse they want, or whether to buy this particular house, or that we would enjoy that freedom as being something that you, as our Creator God, have given us. And so, Father, make these words come alive to us in our open and closed door situations this week. In Jesus' name, amen.